All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello and welcome to the TG Pro Virtual Panel discussion. I am Sukriti Devanshi and I'm here with a stellar panel to talk about sourcing techniques. It is important to note that recruiting and sourcing are not the same. For every 300 or more applicants, only 5 interviewed and 1 will be hired. According to market reports, 9% of people are open to learning more about new opportunities, but only 36% of candidates are actively searching for a new job. As a recruiter, we usually use 2 to 3 successful techniques, but we are more beyond that. Sourcing has changed over the years, and new methods and techniques are added in the process. And it still makes it, recruiting and sourcing difficult most of the time. And recruiters are trying new technologies to move forward and increase the ROI of the company. To discuss this in detail, I have 4 industry leaders with me, and they will talk about how to implement the best sourcing strategies in the recruitment process to acquire the top talent. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Saji, who is the Global Director Talent Acquisition from Wolters Kluwer, Neha, Vyas, Associate Director of Talent Acquisition from Pattern, Jashan Joshi, Manager Talent Sourcing and Talent Research, India, APAC, America, and Europe. And Induja, Rajendran, who is the Head of Talent Acquisition, APAC, and Global Strategy, Postman. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Induja, Neha, Jashan, and Saji. And I'm so delighted to have each one of you with me. Let's do a quick round of introduction and let audience know what you do in your organizations and what is the kind of conversation that you're looking forward to. So let's begin with you, Induja.
So, hello everyone. It's lovely to be here with you today. I'm Induja Rajendran. I lead the talent acquisition for Asia Pacific for Postman. I've been with Postman since the beginning of this year. But overall, I have about 12 years of experience in TA and absolutely love these years behind me. I thoroughly enjoyed working in my career, scaling across technology, product businesses, building both India and global talent to make this happen. Prior to this, I was with Freshworks for about 4 years, leading their talent acquisition organization for product. And I consider that as one of the greatest opportunities to be a part of the history in making when Freshworks became the first Indian SaaS company to be listed in the American bourse during the IPO journey, right? Thoroughly enjoyed my time there. Before that, I was with Amazon for about 8 years, leading their talent acquisition for Kindle India business for both India and Singapore. And personally, I love talking to and engaging with the engineering community, which has basically spurred my interest in contributing to some ebooks on building some great tech talents. And I have also been enjoying my years behind me, speaking at various events like Great Indian Developer Summit, delivering sessions through universities that helps me connect with these communities. Besides that, on weekends, I love spending time with my family, my puppy, and I also love scuba diving. And, I'm super delighted again to be engaging with all of you once again today.
Thank you, Induja. Jashan.
All right, hi, good morning, guys. This is Jashan, and I work with ZS Associates. So you can call it ZS, like the Americans say, as a lead for talent sourcing and talent research, and I lead the activities for India, North America, South America, Europe, and Asia Pacific. So the funny part is I joined ZS in 2012 when we were just 800 people in India, and now we are standing at around 12,000 people. So I've seen tremendous growth here. Lucky to be a part of this journey. And prior to this, I was with Capgemini for around 6 years. I was leading talent sourcing and research there. So around 18 years experience in the industry. The entire experience has been into talent sourcing and research, and I feel very fortunate to have worked across all the geographies, Americas, Europe, APAC, and India. And I'm still learning, and I'm still loving my journey every day. And personally, I'm based out of Pune, and I believe football is my religion. I am an Arsenal supporter, and yeah, looking forward to speak to all of you.
Thanks, Jashan. Neha.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I'm Neha Vyas, working with Pattern Technologies, and I have around 14 plus years of experience and work with the organizations like Josh Software, Globant, Wolters. My motto is humans are not resources, and the same in pattern we believe that it's about the career path, not about the job what people are looking for. And I'm based out of Pune. It's all about me.
Thank you, Neha. Saji?
Yeah, thanks, Prakriti, and good afternoon to all of you. My name is Saji Daniel, based out of Pune. I work for an organization called Wolters. This is a Dutch company, and have been associated with them for a little over 12 months. But prior to this, I've worked with a number of organizations like Fidelity and SunGard, which is a Vyas, and then of course Capgemini and so on and so forth. Predominantly in the HR fraternity, with focus on talent acquisition, and the obvious question is why TA so far? That's the kick that really gives me, talking to people, understanding, who they are, because it's a learning for me. And every individual that you speak, irrespective of what level they are, there's so much that you can learn from them. And I think that's really what really keeps me on. My motto principle is very clear. We all live life once, but make the best use of it. I'm trying to live in the present. And, the pandemic is a great leveler, right? Because it's taught each one of us a big lessons. And my intention is, what life brings to the table and what throws onto you, and take it with a smile. I think that's what I'm looking forward to, and waiting for having a conversation with my fellow colleagues, because this is a topic which is very close to our heart, and take it from there.
Thank you so much, Saji. So after this interesting revelations of what our industry leaders are into and what do they do, I think it's time for me to get on to the questions, and I'm so curious, so excited to have my set of questions pulled through each one of you and get the insights that I've been looking for. So Saji, I would actually start with you. Candidate sourcing is the most critical recruiting skill to find and hire the best candidate as we look at it. What strategies help recruiters in creating that talent pipeline? Because it's important. In today's time, we see candidates having a lot of offers in hand, and they tend to decline it at the last minute. So it's important to have that pipeline created in order to have the next best up. So please go ahead.
Yeah, and thanks for initiating me into this conversation. And it's a topic that's pretty close to me. And so, if I were to paraphrase that, your question is pretty loaded, right? Because there are two parts to it. One is the assumption that sourcing is a key and a very critical ingredient as far as recruitment is concerned, right? If that's the assumption, I sort of want to elaborate a little bit more on that. So that's the first part. And the second part is, if that's true, then what I hear from you is what are some of the interventions, what are some of these trends, or what are some of the strategies that one would deploy to create what we call as a talent pipeline or the talent pool, right? So let me start with the first assumption, right? I mean, there's no doubt about it, right? Hands down. Sourcing is and will continue, and I want to underline the word will continue to be an important ingredient as we start moving forward. And I tell you why I make that statement is because if you look back, and what we were discussing earlier on is the pandemic in itself, has taught each one of us a good lesson, right? And there are a couple of phenomena that I really want to highlight. Number one, all of us have heard about this phenomenon called Great Resignation, which started off in the US and percolated all across in India. And most of the Asian companies, Asian economies are not, part of this, right? So if you look at what the Great Resignation has showcased, and now, of course, as we're hearing this new term called Grand Reshuffle, it only means that people have choices, okay? The talent that we're talking today, or the talent that we're hunting around, have got choices. They decide who they want to work for, where, which, when, why, and when they want to work for is all changing the way we source candidates, right? So that's one element. The second element, what I also want to showcase is we've also heard about these terms called work from home, which at once upon a time was like taboo, or once upon a time, which was like meant only for the elite. It's no longer the game so far, right? Because what it's taught us is the environment has completely changed, especially as the workforce is concerned. Now people are talking something called WAFA, which simply means work anytime from anywhere. Okay, which then means the kind of people that we are trying to now harness is going to be completely different from what it was pre-pandemic days. Last but not the least is, and specifically from a country like an India standpoint, is research indicates, or in fact the data indicates, that close to about 30 to 35% of the population that's now entering the workforce is the so-called new age workers, whether they're millennials or Gen Zs, whatever you call them, is their perspective in life is far, far different from what each one of us know about it, right? So you put these three things into perspective, and now you see a sourcer who's supposed to be a specialist. Is he or she in a position to really look at the kind of a talent that we would want, right? So that's one element that I really want to talk about. The second element that what we're also talking about is that sourcing, as I said, is an integral part, whether you call it the heart of the function, whether you call it as, the very, ecosystem of how the recruitment works through, it's sort of the fuel or sort of galvanizes the recruitment. The fact of the matter is, if sourcing as a function has to survive and thrive, we need to take a step back and say, do we have specialists who are really understanding what they're trying to source? Because here are some data points that I would like to showcase. Gartner says that by 2030, nearly about 40% of organizations will use AI, ML, machine learning, deep diving, whatever you talk about from a big depth. All that will change unless and until the sourcers have the ability and capability to really look for the kind of a talent that we want, right? And then when you look at LinkedIn says that the active population or the active talent pool is shrinking. Nearly about 70% of the population are believed as passive, and you combine it with the so-called recession that's looming, that's going to be a dangerous scenario that we're going to look for. So if that's the talent that we would want to see after, that's the talent that we would want the sources to go after, then the question is, what would be some of the initiatives, what would be some of the practices that we would need to go after to get these particular talent, right? So that's the first point, right? So there's no doubt about it that sourcing is critical. Now, if I look at what are some of the steps that organizations are taking, including, Wolters Kluwers, I'm not going to what the conventional ways of sourcing is. I would rather focus on what the non-conventional was, right? What we've realized, the team is this, that 80% of our fulfillments are done by the recruiters. There's no doubt about it, right? We've been able to manage the show. The biggest challenge that what we've seen is that 20% of the positions that we aren't in a position to fulfill. And if you look at the standard 80-20 pattern, those 20% of the fulfillments are the ones which create a larger impact and a wider ramification, which is where we as a team get beaten up. So our sourcing strategy is very clear. What is it that we can do to ensure that that 20% has been taken care of, right? So if that's the motherhood statement, I mean, here are some of the steps that what we've been trying to work around this, okay? This grand principle, right? That people they don't join the organization, they join the manager. And at the same time, the manager is the one who's responsible for the person to exit. We've looked at the hiring manager as one of the key pivotal areas to see how we can harness their capabilities. So there's a lots of effort to educate, to sensitize, and to also tell the hiring managers that they need to start leveraging their social media footprint. And again, this ties up to the fact is, if you look at the first thing what candidates would look at is, give me the job description and who am I going to work for? Once they realize that who am I going to work for, they troll the social media just to get a hypothesis who the person is that I'm going to work for. Then they take a call whether they would want to work for this person or not. If the hiring manager or if the business leader doesn't have a social media footprint that's compelling enough, we've got a loser there. So one of the reasons that we're trying to work very closely with our business leaders is that how do you really bring out this compelling story that the person can narrate either through a social media footprint or by way of word of mouth. So hiring manager becomes critical for us, right? So that's number one. The second initiative that what we're also trying to do, which we've been able to make some, headway, is that when we talk about 20% of the population that we don't hire or we've not been able to fulfill, one of the primary reason, of course, is, in today's world, is offer decline is the paramount that everybody talks about. But what we've also realized is that many of these skills are extremely niche, and there's definitely a scarcity of good resources because everybody's vying for the same talent. The way we've structured that is that each of our sources, when they assess a candidate, they use this formula called potential versus elimination. We look for the potential of the candidate. We are not fitting the individual to the role. We are trying to fit the individual to the company or to the firm, which simply means that every individual who gets assessed and doesn't get through, there's a constant conversation by way of mentoring to the person as to why he or she didn't make it. And we would rather prefer to have this individual come back 6 months down the line and restart the process with us. So that's the whole conversation that's been shifting across. To the earlier point is, a sourcer, the strategy is very clear. He or she needs to build a talent pool before even we get into a talent pipeline. Because we believe a talent pipeline is nothing but a subset of the talent pool. For a talent pool, the sourcer must be proactive. Unfortunately, today, most of our sources do not really accomplish their task is because they are reactive in nature. They have not built the talent pool. They have not gotten to an engagement. They have not got into a community site to start building up the conversations. So the way we've structured is we have our sources constantly talking to candidates, irrespective of whether the person has got selected or not, and start mentoring, developing them as to how they will be better equipped when they want to join WK subsequently. So in a nutshell, working very closely with the hiring managers, getting into what we call as a screening in or a screening out, focusing more on potential, not on the elimination, getting into scenarios saying that how best we'll be able to nurture this individual so that he becomes or she becomes down the line an evangelist for WK. And then of course, we've got a number of databases that we start creating, because to the earlier point is offer decline is a vein for all of us. We've got big concerns that we've got. The average candidate has got multiple offers in that, primarily because it's a candidate driven market. But then if we can start looking at the ones that we've lost and start building up capabilities and start building engagement with them, it's just a matter of time before we get a winner there. So in a nutshell, some of these initiatives, some of these strategies that as an organization we've been able to dabble with. I'm not saying that we made marked and improved successes under this, but definitely baby steps, which is helping us in the program.
Thank you, Saji. I think those details were very important, on this forum, because as I mentioned earlier, a lot of offers, and I think in today's time, customers equal to candidates in today's market, with a lot of job openings and gig economy and hybrid working that people are looking at. I was reading this report of ET somewhere where youngsters, specifically the freshers that we hire these days, are opting for remote working. They would want to stay back in their hometowns and then work, right? And the whole lifestyle change, which people like us used to look at in our times, that moving out to a city and working, I think that pattern has also changed, and that pattern is indirectly affecting the entire recruitment process across organizations, right? So some very pertinent point made. Thank you so much for that. I will now move to Neha. Neha, have you implemented the effective sourcing strategy in the recruitment process, and how have you done it so far in your organization?
So Sukriti, I don't believe in going only with one strategy, okay? Because with every requirement, strategy changes. Okay, and we have to be ready with the new updated strategy before the requirements comes in, and we have to ready with a few questions with us. What we are offering to the candidates, make a list of the competencies, what we are looking in the candidates, because as Saji said that 20% of positions we are not able to fulfill. We have to be proactive in that. We have to be connected with them, and we have to make sure that what kind of positions we are having. It's a bulk, or it's a 2 or 3 people we are looking for, or the priority levels we are looking for. Okay, so if it's a vanilla skill which is easily available, we go with the job posting, sourcing, and the job portals, employee referrals, which is always the best way to hire someone. Then walk-ins. But when it's got to niche skills, 80% of the candidates are not ready to change the job. So that time it's really challenging for every one of us. So there we can go with the competitor analysis. We try to understand where they are hiring from, where they are losing candidates. Okay, we have to be ready with the analysis. We have to we can go with the coding competition. We go with the past candidates. In pattern, we believe that the candidate is a reject. Okay, that person is not aligned with the current requirement, and he is suitable for maybe for the future requirements. So that's the main criteria we have. We go with the past candidates. We go to specialized sites. We go to GitHub. We go to Behance and other portals. We can go with events, meetups, conferences, and getting connected with the candidates is the most important thing. And LinkedIn really helps in that. So social media is the main thing, and maintaining a good connection is very important before implementing any strategy. And depending on the requirements, you can go ahead and do it.
Thanks, Neha. As you mentioned, various strategies and various sources that the dependency is onto. Jashan, I'll move to you. You mentioned that ZS has expanded 12,000 employees after the time you've joined, and I think one of the very important factors that you must have witnessed is about eliminating the dependency on external recruitment firms and reducing the cost. Because the more you hire, the more the cost and the ROI becomes a huge concern for you. So how sourcing pipeline helps in eliminating the dependency on external recruitment firms and reduce the cost overall?
Yeah, good point, Sukriti. First of all, a disclaimer, I'm not against the agencies or the vendors. All right. Okay, so yeah, and we did hire so many people, and we do hiring in a lot of niche areas like data science, artificial intelligence, product development, platforms, and so on and so forth. So everybody does. And like Saji said, like Neha said, this is a talent war. It's not easy to get the best of the talent, and offer declines or the dropouts is a reality. 40 to 50% is the industry average. And companies like us, and where our offer to or the offer decline ratio was around 10%, it rose to around 30%. So what I'm trying to say is, the talent war is a reality. And while there are a lot of business leaders and recruiting leaders, they are in sync and they are forming different strategies to tackle this. Like they say in the war, the war is about old men talking and young men dying. Yeah, it's like recruiters are getting burnt, and the only weapon right now, or the only solution, is the talent pipeline. So so people often get confused with talent pipeline. They think it is just a repository of the profiles, or is the database dumb? You save in a folder and you can use whenever you want. Absolutely not. Talent pipeline, you can call it as an asset, and you have to build the talent pipeline. Talent pipeline is not the dumb. It is an engaged talent pool which you can utilize where you want, and you can also use it for your branding activities and multiple things. So I would say it's a 5-point strategy. First, you have to assess what is it that you're looking for, like a bit of talent research, market intelligence. Then you do the sourcing, right? You have to source the right talent, right fits, and you have to take in consideration multiple factors. Even CTC is one part of it. Then you build a talent pool. So when I say build, like Neha just said, there are talent pools. Like Behance is a talent pool, TechGig is a talent pool, Kaggle is a community, it's a talent pool. So similarly, you have to create a platform internally to build your talent. So we have an ATS, we have a talent pool feature, and we have different talent pools built in. So what do we do? And the next step should be engage. So now you can engage your talent pool in two ways. Either you can ask your recruiters to send them emails about your organization, your growth. If your leaders are speaking at conferences, you can invite them. Or number two, which most of the companies are currently doing, they're using the social advocacy tools, right? There's a scorecard, and you can integrate your social advocacy tool with your ATS. You have a talent pool. One click, you send emails to your candidates and keep them engaged, right? So that is a very good strategy, and that's really working out for us, especially in the niche areas. And like you mentioned about the cost, so the cost is a no-brainer, right? The cost per hire is the recruitment cost divided by the number of hires. I mean, the internal cost plus external cost divided by the number of. So you remove the external cost when you don't work heavily with the vendors, right? If you have a very strong, I'm not saying, like Saji said, there's a difference between a sourcer and a good sourcer. If you have a strong sourcing team and a strong recruiting team, you're engaging with your talent frequently, you're taking it as a job, not as some initiative, then probably you can cut down the external cost or the vendor cost in a large amount with a very big margin. And we have seen that our vendor percentage has gone down, whether it's a ramp up era or slow down, whatever. And it really works. It does. So like I was saying, sourcer's job is to identify the best of the profile, but a good sourcer's job is not to miss out on even a good profile, right? So that's what we are doing, and it's really helping us here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jashan. I think the community part that you've just mentioned, I think it's a very important target when it comes to hiring people in the tech domain. And that's exactly wherein you establish a relationship either through a hackathon, either through competitions, or maybe just putting out a hiring challenge, right? So thank you so much for that. Induja, I'll come to you now. When it comes to candidate sourcing, the important set of matrices on which we analyze and on which we decide upon hiring is a very important aspect, right? One of the things that is a part of the recruitment process and comes in the end to to just decide the decision-making factor that is like put together. When it comes to candidate sourcing, what important set of matrices should be considered to tag performance, and how can recruiters can look at both qualitative as well as quantitative analysis when it comes to this.
Thank you, Sukriti. Measuring effectiveness is definitely everyone's favorite, also close to my heart. So before we get into the actual defining the metrics, right? I think it's super important for us to get some of our fundamentals right. And by that, I mean, the key to any sourcing performance metrics or KPI, right, is to tie it backward to the organization's goal and the current problems that the organization is trying to solve, right? And that is likely to vary between the size and the scale of the organization, the complexity of the product or the business structure by itself, right? For instance, I want to take a personal example, right? During the whole tech boom, all of us here have seen a lot of young leaders from FANGs who've taken up a leadership role in leading startups, right? The instant reflex usually is to replicate some of the KPIs and goals that we've experienced in our learning through our previous experience, right? For instance, I do personally know a very young leader, super successful at Google, who took on a leadership role at a startup. Great people manager, super hardworking and committed, right? But from our experiences, just like that leader, right, from Google, we all know how important diversity is as in any given organization. So as a reflex, this person, this acquaintance of mine, set diversity sourcing as the key metrics, right? But the organization that he was currently associated with, their challenges were different. Business scaling was their key critical problem, right? And that's the problem that the startup was trying to solve. So while diversity is essential part of any organization's goal, it just becomes slightly more less important for, say, for example, a 200, 300 headcount organization, right? Where the primary goal is to increase the business velocity. And for this acquaintance of mine, having diversity sourcing as a metrics, right, kind of slowed down the business velocity and had an impact on the organization, right? So I think it's essential for leaders to kind of step back to understand what is the business problem that we're trying to solve before defining these key metrics. And it's the nature of the business and trying to solve the problems all should be the base of the performance metrics that we define for sources, right? For a sourcer or any TA professional, the softer metrics are a lot more important, which is why I will cover that later during the session. But in general, some of the hard metrics in my experience, I'm just going to talk from my experience, is the usual, right? Monthly offer goals, followed by the conversion metrics through the entire recruiting life cycle. Could be the profile viewed and shortlisted, contacted, applied, sources screening selects, the usual submission to resume shortlist to assessment, and clearing, depending on the strength of the feedback of the candidate, of a shortlist and the number of hires that they've had and the declines, right? The second hard metric that I think is effective is the time to source, right? How many messages before candidate agrees to talk? How long does it take to kind of convince the candidate to apply? The overall response rate. Do these candidates tend to move faster than the regular candidates through different other sources through the recruiting life cycle, right? Then the third metrics is basically the effective utilization of the tools. For instance, it could be multiple tools in the industry, right? It could be InstaHire, LinkedIn, HireEasy. But what is the overall engagement that we are looking at? Engagement time. What is the usage report of these sources, right? Number of profiles viewed versus screened and all of that. The fourth, which is very close to my heart, is the passive candidates versus the active candidates mixed, right? So just for the larger audience, passive candidate is someone who hasn't applied to a career site directly, right? Versus an active candidate is someone who has expressed the interest to apply for an organization. The effort taken for the sourcer to turn around a passive candidate is a lot higher versus an active candidate. And a lot of research proves that passive candidates are a lot more effective in clearing the interview evaluation consistently through organization research. I think NASCOM also came up with a survey that indicated the same thing, right? And the fifth is the overall process excellence, which is essential for across the TA function, right? Reporting out. The sourcing leaders, it's very important to call out and report out to 360-degree stakeholders where their sourcing is likely to fail, as in if there is any point in time, if they're going lesser than their set goals, it's important for them to let their recruiters know or their hiring managers know, depending on their 360-degree feedback, so a plan B can be worked upon, right? And when I mean process excellence, it could even be as basic as defining checklists for all processes and the 100% adherence, right? For example, just for example, right, ATS discipline, managing source conflicts in a professional way, or following a particular script or an elevated pitch for the organization, whatever is defined by the organization based on the need for the organization, right? The sixth one that I think is critical is also the recruiter screening feedback. While I know this is a very debatable topic, at some level, I think how the recruiter feels about the overall quality of sourcing of profiles is also super important. And last but not the least, the candidate experience survey, right? How often do recruiters and sources send out personalized messages without spamming the candidates? How much do they research on the individual candidate before sending these contact messages out, right? At this point, I want to, I must also call out based on my experience, right, that while we're talking about KPIs, the primary reason why KPIs fail is our inability to track them. For example, all of us must have come across this, right, where an OKR is set at the beginning of the year and performance management happens twice a year. But the weekly reviews usually happen on Excel sheets or Word documents and other modes of reviews, right? And they aren't fully aligned with the defined KPIs that we laid out in the beginning of the year. And suddenly in the mid-year or the end of the year, we scramble around to find effective ways to measure and all of that. So it's essential to not only define these metrics and KPIs, but also to find a way to make them the center around which our reviews run across, right? Whether it's with the business or with the recruiters or recruiting team or HR, the other HR functions, across all functions. And over and above this, the critical aspect of a successful sourcer are also the softer metrics that we don't often talk about, right? Which is to be able to build relationships and thereby building community, picking back on Saji and Jashan, right? And to be a lesser of a sourcer or an organization's advocate versus being a trusted consultant to a candidate, right? To be able to sacrifice short-term benefits for long-term gains, doing the right thing for the candidate, right? I would also like to conclude by saying that while we have some hard metrics that we just discussed in place, it's important to advocate and provide the sources with a comfortable environment and help the sources to build their own brand versus being a brand, right, for another organization. This, in the long term, usually builds a trusted relationship, helps repurpose candidates that have upskilled themselves, creates a great community, and overall build a world-class team wherever they are.
Lovely. I think Induja, you've like very finely, given us the bullet points of the important matrices that one should look at. As Jashan and both of you mentioned about the candidate feedbacks and how we are trying to look at minimizing the entire turnaround time, seeing if the candidate, how much time does he or she takes to respond, setting up the entire thing precisely. The whole purpose of our market analysis is because we are working on a product called TG Pro. TechGig is a developer community, and we keep on conducting hackathons and coding competitions, etc. So people, developers, IT professionals keep on participating. And we kind of have come up with a idea to create their developer profiles as per their performances, the skill sets, and the competencies. And that actually narrows down a lot of time for the recruiters in order to identify people with the right skill sets, one, because there is no manual intervention. The more you participate and automate, you just have to feed in your details and the entire profile, sums it up. So, it is surely based on your competencies and how much you scored in our hackathons, how much you've performed, and what is the frequency with. And it precisely is it's like a historical preview of a candidate which is like very prevalent for today's recruiters. And when you go out into the market for sourcing people, I think downsizing the candidates from like a bulk that we look at, maybe 100, 200 or 500, whatever list we are trying to look at, downsizing it to 10, 50, or we'll just say 90 even is one of the hardest job that we'll have to shuffle through the profiles, and no matter which platform or which hiring medium we're using, right? So, at least for the developer community, we've tried to minimize this by doing this, of course. And, for example, if recruiters are looking at Java developers or a front-end developer, we would just identify those 100 or 50 or whatever the number they have given us, put with those profiles, and then I think that becomes, a cut down scope processes in between of scrutinizing and then just talking to the candidate. You have a preview of the entire competency that they have. You can just directly call the candidate for the interview in case if you think it matches the job. So we're trying to help out recruiters with that perspective. And now I would want to talk about the recruitment tools, of course. As we know, recruitment tools are changing and evolving, and as we speak, the market is continuously trying to innovate and try making things easier for everyone. What tools help to achieve the advanced sourcing goals to find the right candidate in time to build your pipeline? So, Saji, let's begin with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any affinity to one particular tool, right? Because there are dime a dozen available in the market. But as an organization, we do work, or we've deployed a very reputed, enterprise-wide CRM for the simple reason that I talked about earlier on is it's all about engagement, right? So we've got tons and tons of candidates who are there in the database, but the question is, who's really engaging with these candidates, right? I mean, it's on one hand, it's good to say that you've got X number of followers or X number of people who applied for the role, but the fact of the matter is how many of these are thoroughly and truly engaged is where the big point is. So I think this particular tool that we've got constantly, converses with the candidate, and it also gives us a score and also gives us some kind of element to the recruiter wherein this manual intervention takes place. Because at the end of the day, nobody really wants to talk to a bot or get into a chat bot, right? They would rather prefer to have a human interface. So I think that conversation with the recruiters and with potential candidates is really helping us. The way we look at it is very simple, right? For us as sourcers, if you look at the age-old tradition, this person is a hunter. We want this individual to be equipped with the latest of armory. And the armory that we are giving him is technology that I just spoke about. But the other element, of course, is also helping this individual to really probe why a person is really looking out for a change. So I think those probing skills is where we're trying to constantly speak to. So I would say it's a combination of two. Technology, the tools that I just spoke about, is something that's helping him or her. At the same time, is also helping this individual to look at other elements to really harness the kind of person that we would want. And I think that's really going to go through, because to the point that I said earlier on is, if not today, machines will come into play. But then will they replace human beings? The answer is no. And I think that's where, sourcings, recruitment specialists like each one of us need to ensure that we've got our sourcers capable enough and give them all the equipment and all the machinery to ensure that they get the right talent.
Agreed, Saji. I think no matter how much automation building or the process is automated for any one of us, the decision making will still be in the human hands, and the human intelligence is what exactly makes it more relevant for everyone. So thank you so much for that. I would now move to Neha. Neha, what do you think about this? We know what are the tools that are changing, and how do you how does it actually help sourcing go to find the right candidate for you?
And so, as Saji rightly said, that application tracking is the most important thing. Okay, the candidate pool we are already having, it's the most important for us. Plus all the social media, LinkedIn, and even from TechGig also, I'm getting the candidates who have participated in the hackathon. All these things are really helpful for us. And we keep on engaging with the candidates. We go Naukri has a talent pulse. We go then do the competitor analysis. So all these tools are really helpful for us in a longer run, and keep getting engaged with the candidates. LinkedIn plays a bigger role there.
Thank you, Neha. Jashan? We can't hear you. You're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. All right, cool. So about, in fact, like Saji also said about the intervention of AI or machine learning in sourcing, in recruiting, Neha also resonated with that. So I was in a global conference just a couple of years ago, and the theme was the machines will replace the sourcers, because sourcing is a very easy job, just run something on portals and get the talent, right? But since then, the sourcing function has grown by 48% in the world. Yeah, since the intervention of AI and machine learning, every company is investing in the sourcing engine. Yeah, because this is a different ball game. But I agree. I mean, machines might not replace the sources, but might replace the bad sources or not so good sources. So now you have to cope up with the technology. Like every sourcer can use LinkedIn, but how many sources can use LinkedIn Talent Insights? Many sources can do talent research, but how many people can generate insights and share recommendations? Yeah, the journey from research to recommendation is a game changer. So this is sourcing 2.0, and now every company needs to build a recruiting toolbox. We have a recruiting toolbox. What I mean is, like, you have job portals, which is like the bread and butter in India for sure. Rest of the world, you don't have job portals, right? It's LinkedIn and more of passive sourcing. Then you have to build a repository of the Chrome extensions, how you can extract email IDs, how you can extract phone numbers, what should be your outreach program. Like Neha said, like Induja said about the passive talent, right? So Behance, amazing talent for the design professionals. But again, if you're not hiring design professionals, there's no need to have Behance in your toolbox, right? You can have Kaggle. So Google, Facebook, Amazon, the entire hiring of the data scientists are done through Kaggle. It's a platform, right? Now, Code Gladiator, which is a TechGig platform, pretty intriguing, right? You can hire women coders through Code Gladiators. I'm talking about it because DEI is the priority for most of the organization, and DEI sourcing is a different ball game, right? So you need to have a different recruiting toolbox for DEI, right? So every sourcer needs to upgrade himself or herself, build the recruiting toolbox, build talent communities, and then they could stand in the Game of Thrones, Game of Talent War.
Thank you, Jashan. Induja, what would you like to add here?
So before we get started, I want to say that while infrastructure is my favorite topic in modern recruiting, some part of me also wants to, I think it's important to minimize the total number of tools that we use, right? Because one of the modern challenges with the increased amount of tools and technologies that we are depending on is the biggest problem that I have faced through my career is maintaining and the bandwidth required from recruiters to manage these tools, right? Which is why it becomes very essential to bring in all the tools under the same large umbrella to be able to minimize the redundancy of the effort by integrating all of them under one umbrella, right? For common understanding, it's usually the application tracking system, right? A lot of times I've seen companies focus heavily on tools across different recruiting life cycle that are not under this umbrella, where recruiters scramble around the last minute to get their data updated in all of these tools. That's just, I think it's just very little effective use of the recruiter's bandwidth, right? And I, at this point, do not want to specifically name tools because it's also, again, right, tying it back to what I said earlier, finding the right tool is based on the business problem that you're currently trying to solve.
True.
Right? But it's important that to know that tools don't just stop or start with the CRM and ETS, right? it's very important for us to understand that the initial impression that the candidate makes with the organization, or rather the organization makes with the candidate, right, is very key to be able to generate interest. For example, JD is taken for granted, right? Job description is the first exposure of the organization to a particular candidate, right? And there are multiple tools that help make your JD attractive, to do the right thing, and all of that. TextU is a great tool that helps auto-detect errors, grammatical errors, and there's something called Gender Decoder that goes to, it's artificial intelligence, a free tool where for organizations that are that have diversity as a priority, right? It helps identify the sentiments of the reader about how they feel when they are looking through the job description, right? So it kind of neutralizes the emotions and gives up a recommendation for you, right? But overall, as we all know, the mothership of all is the ATS, and that's the most prominent of all. So it becomes extremely crucial for us to choose the right ATS that works best for the organization, right? For instance, Workday is one of the most loved ATS, and it's the most utilized ATS as well, right, across a lot of established organizations. But one of the requirements on Workday is to create a profile, mandatory profile, which means that when the candidate is trying to apply for a role, it's essential for them to create a profile, be able to log in before they can apply for a role. And if you're looking at an organization, for example, that is in discussion, right, is looking at just about 2 to 4 critical leadership hires in engineering, we are looking at attracting the world's best talent. Are we saying that we are expecting this person to, this is for the most part going to be a passive candidate, right? Are we looking at this person to be able to create a login and then apply? I doubt that. So identifying an ATS that works best based on the business problem is the best instance for us to go after. But tools, like I said before, is across the spectrum, and there are multiple levels, and it's important for you to consider all of those while bringing the best tools in, right? Job description, then you have your application tracking system, then you have social management tools for recruiters, and then you have networking tools for recruiters, and then you have collaboration tools for recruiters. There are also chatbots to make the whole phone screening and the interviewing process a lot easier for recruiters. There are screening and skill assessment tools. There are video interviewing tools. There are assessment tools. And there are also onboarding tools. So it's important for the TA manager or the head of talent acquisition to take an overall assessment, to just zoom out a little bit, understand what are the required tools for us to be able to present the right infrastructure for the organization and the recruiting team.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Induja. I think the various factors that each one of you have given us here is an important aspect for us also to understand your preview and your understanding, your strategies of how you look at things when it comes to recruitment. And I think I had a lovely time knowing, your insights and your knowledge experience of talent acquisition, whatever you have so far, and you guys have recruited so many talent, across your organization for so many verticals, and I'm sure the decision making, the strategies keeps on innovating every day. So first of all, thank you so much for being a part of the discussion. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And before we wrap this up, I would want to have a closing remark from each one of you. So let's begin with you, Induja.
I'd love to say that thank you, Sukriti and folks, for giving me the platform. It's always great to talk and be able to engage with the tech community. Very close to my heart, and absolutely love this discussion. So one of the things that's very important for all of us to know is while we are working on some critical hiring activities and sourcing activities, it's also important for us to really stop, look back, reflect, and really enjoy the moment, and really live it up from there on.
Thanks, Induja. Neha?
First of all, thank you for inviting us. Yeah. And this was a really good platform, and I got to interact with people, industry leaders, so it was really nice doing that. And I truly believe that hiring a right person is not a single person's job. And the discussion we had, it gives them a better idea that only sourcing will not help us. The hiring managers, everybody, all the stakeholders are equally responsible for making any decision. It's because it's about the career of a person who is joining us. So thank you.
Thank you, Neha. Saji?
Yeah, same here. I think it's, first and foremost, thank you for inviting us over. It's always a great pleasure. As I said earlier on, it's a learning, right? Every time you hear someone, there's something that you get out of this. So therefore, it's a great platform, and thank you for inviting us over. I just leave with this point, echo what even Neha says, is at the end of the day, recruitment is nothing but a team sport. And it can only happen and fulfill, if all the individuals who are part of this particular sport can do it together in tandem. Because at the end of the day, we're trying to hire the right person, and hiring the right person is a paradigm shift into the way we do. But thank you so much for calling us over, and really appreciate this conversation.
Thank you, Saji. Jashan?
Yeah, thanks, Sukriti, and thank you so much, TechGig, for inviting me. I feel really honored to be a part of this eminent panel. And the topic was very close to my heart. I feel really honored to be part of the sourcing industry. And India is the sourcing hub, right? This is the biggest industry in the world. And yeah, just one parting thought, that the question I always ask to myself, when was the last time you did something for the first time? So I'll go with that.
Thank you, Jashan. Okay, so we had a lovely time, listening to our guest speakers today. Audience, I'm sure you also you've made notes of what our recruiters think and how they're actually looking at the hiring pattern and recruitment process in the market. Thank you so much. This is overwhelming for all of us, and I think I have my set of notes ready to understand what you as recruiters are trying to look at. Audience, we have some more exciting conversations lined up, and you can always look up to TechGig for the latest tech happenings and updates. Thank you so much for joining us and watching us. And this calls for a wrap. Induja, Saji, Jashan, Neha, thank you so much for being part of this conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Wish you all the best. Take care,
Thank
guys.
you so much, everyone. Please stay safe and take care.
Bye. Have a nice weekend.